Welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network, coming to you from the TeacherCast studios since 2011. Join us each week as we bring you the latest educational news, EdTech updates, and hottest interviews with today's most influential leaders in education. And now, for your host, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is the Jeff Bradbury Show, a podcast where we bring on interesting people making amazing changes to the world, and today is certainly no exception. All of our show archives can be found over at teachercast.net/podcast, and you can find more information about today's topic by looking at the Jeff Bradbury Show, episode number 53. My guest today is a business owner, entrepreneur who started off trying to figure out how to make life easier for us. And then something happened around 2020 and especially happened around 2023. And we're going to learn today how artificial intelligence not only changed his business, but how he's using artificial intelligence to help change the way that we interact with others around the world. I want to bring on today my good friend, Mr. Thomas Ryan. Thomas, how are you today? Welcome to the Jeff Bradbury Show.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
I am so excited to have you on the show today. You have been through such a whirlwind over the last few months with this whole artificial intelligence revolution that's been happening, but that wasn't a fluke. Talk to us a little bit about what you've been doing these days and what is going on these days with your company, Bigly Sales.
So the big thing we're doing is we're replacing call centers with AI. We're programming the AI to do the function of what a call center would do. So instead of sending that call over to India somewhere, or over to Pakistan, or over to the Philippines, someone with perfect English that sounds human can interact with the person, listen to what they say, answer any question they may ask, and then drive them through whatever process we're looking for. So it could be qualification, it could be doing a bunch of intake questions for really any type of industry you can imagine, donations, sending contracts, sending payment links, etc. So it's really pretty versatile, and it could also be used a lot for support or for training.
Now, I love the interaction that you have here. And of course, the website is Bigly Sales, BIGLYSALES.com. Now, Thomas, of course, we're all used to picking up the phone and, click here for one and click here for two. But you guys have actually revolutionized the way that this thing works, where you're having a conversation with this thing in real time, and you might not know that you're talking to an AI bot.
Yeah, some people have no idea. So what we do is generally someone calls in and picks up the phone and it says, "Hi, this is Sally, this is Bob, this is, Cindy, whatever the name is. How can I help you?" And then you say what you're trying to do and then or what information that you're looking for. And if it's something that's just support based, the AI can just answer the question right then and there. Maybe you need some information sent out. What we really do is we do a lot of things with APIs, so we can connect it to any other system. We can connect it to a CRM, we can to a customer relationship system, we can connect it to a travel site, we can connect it to pretty much anything and grab that data from anywhere and be able to feed that back to the person.
How did you get started with all of this stuff? I mean, Bigly Sales has been around for a little bit, but talk to us here about how did you make that big break? How did you become an entrepreneur? What led you down the path of creating your own business?
So I was in the staffing industry for years. I've had my own businesses. I mean, really my whole life, I've been kind of involved as an entrepreneur. My parents were both entrepreneurs. They got divorced. They both had their own companies. I was working, from, probably the age of about 7 or 8 My parents had me out doing things. We'd always go out, me and my friends do something to raise money, right? Be it finding golf balls in the woods and selling golf balls, the profit margins on that was great. Or shining shoes or washing cars or delivering newspapers or, you name it. There was something that we were doing along the way. Me and my brother actually had a baseball card business where we used to go to card shows on the weekend. We would go, it was Tom and Adams cards, and we'd go to card shows around Massachusetts and, the surrounding areas, almost every weekend for a few years. So, I've been doing this sort of thing my whole life. That's saying how we got started. The idea around Bigly was CRM systems today didn't really capture, at least when I was doing it, they didn't capture a lot of the data, and a lot of people had to do data entry. And people hated data entry. So what ended up happening is most of the emails didn't make it into the system. None of the text messages made it into the system. Very few phone calls were logged in the system. You had no transcription of what was said. You didn't have a recording most of the time of what was said. So the whole idea was to put a system together where everything was saved and tracked. People could use it from anywhere in the country. You could manage workers remotely, especially during the pandemic. And, you'd full analytics on everything that happened. So that was the initial idea. And we saw a lot of problems with users using the system. They didn't want another tool. They wanted it done for them, is really what I found. That there was plenty of tools out there, and the folks who wanted a tool, generally they were using one already. So we would have people come in and say, yeah, we'll use this to send out a couple million emails or a couple million text messages, but they didn't really want to use the tool the way we had designed it initially. So you have to listen to the customer. And then when AI started coming around, we saw how it could fix every problem that we had in the business virtually overnight. So I made a decision in early 2023. I said, look, we're going to use AI in everything that we do. We're going to use it as much as possible. We're going to use it everywhere we can, and we're going to be ahead of the curve on this. And this is the direction that we're going as a company.
Let's go back to that time around 2022, 23 here, because for myself, we're in the classroom, we're working with students, we're doing our thing. And then I just remember turning around and everybody was ChatGPT. From a technical point of view, could you kind of walk us through what happened? What was that breakthrough? Did everybody sort of catch that AI bug, or did somebody crack the code and then everybody...
Well, OpenAI cracked the code is really what it came down to.
Yeah, I never... how did all of that stuff suddenly work, and then suddenly we're now in this AI revolution here?
So they've been working on it for probably a decade, or close to a decade, before it broke. And if you go back, DARPA was doing things with AI in the 70s and 80s. They were trying to do things with AI. They just couldn't figure out really how to make it work. So AI has been around or at least people trying to do AI has been around for a long time. What happened with the large language models, the LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude, is I think a couple of things happened. Number one, they finally got the computing power to make these things work. The reason this happened now and not 15 years ago or 15 years in the future is there was finally enough compute out there. There was enough tensors on chips to be able to make this actually work. So, what they've done is they've basically taken everything that's on the internet and they've trained these models on it, or at least almost everything that's on the internet. Starting with the written word, and then they've moved on to speech, podcasts, videos. But now, most of the content that has ever been put on the internet has been used to train these models. And how it works is very similar to how Google works. If you start typing in something on Google, if you type in restaurants, right, it's going to come up with near me, best, whatever the 4 or 5 most common things are for that restaurant. And if you type in anything on Google, they're going to give you 5 or 6 options, which are the 5 or 6 most common options. And lo and behold, they're almost always right. My God, I was looking for a restaurant near me. I wasn't looking to purchase a restaurant. I wasn't looking for restaurant equipment. I was looking to go eat at someplace, right? So, that is exactly what the AI does, at least the LLMs do. They start doing autocomplete. And it's the same thing with pictures. What should be in a picture? that's why for a long time, and even still, if you go to Midjourney or if you go to Stable Diffusion or one of these things and you say, hey, have something written on a chalkboard or create this meme, it doesn't know what to do because it doesn't really understand the letters. It's trying to autocomplete something. So there will be something that kind of looks like a letter, but isn't. So I don't know if you've seen this or if you tried to do this, but it's still trying to do autocomplete. So, I mean, we're so early on in this. We're so early. This is like the internet in 1995. This is like all the people who tried to download a picture on the internet, and they're like, it took 10 minutes. No one's ever going to use this thing. That's kind of the stage we're at. It might be down from 10 minutes to 5 minutes now to download that picture, but that's kind of where we are as far as AI is in its life cycle.
And with companies like yourselves and others who are building their applications through the use of AI, I'm curious, what does that look like on the back end? And is that there's one mother brain out there in the world that you guys just API into, or because the computing power is there, your company or companies like yourself is able to start from scratch, or how does all that stuff get to be working on the back end?
So that's a great question. They're saying to train the next model that's out there, the next version of GPT, the cost is going to be in the billions. Right. It's going to be north of $1 billion. So as a small company with 20 employees, obviously we don't have that sort of money to spend. Almost no one has that sort of money to spend unless you're named Microsoft or Facebook or Google or something like that, which lo and behold are the people who are making these things. So it's really cost prohibitive to program a model like that and train the entire thing from scratch. What a lot of people do is fine tune. And there's some stories about that where I believe it was Bloomberg who came out and they fine-tuned a model of like GPT 3.5, and they spent millions of dollars fine-tuning this model to be exactly what they want. And then the next version came out and it blew away the model they fine-tuned. So what most of the people are doing is you can definitely fine-tune a model, which is doing a much smaller training set on that model, either with images or with text or whatever that you're doing. But what most people are doing, the context windows are getting so big, you can feed so much data into it. The newest version of Google's model now has 1 million tokens, which is 1 million words, right? I don't know exactly how many pages that is. It's a lot. It's thousands of pages that you can literally put into the context window, which is basically the working memory of this model. So for almost anyone's purposes, that's enough. Right. And that's going to go up, by another factor of 10 very soon. So that's going to go to 10 million and then probably to 50 or 100 million, within the next couple of years, which it's probably enough for almost anything you can think of. I mean, you can have the whole King James Bible and the works of Shakespeare in there and still have room left over. So, I don't think a lot of people are going to be building models from scratch along those lines. The main players out there for the models, you have, OpenAI with ChatGPT, you have Claude, you have Mistral, which is a French company, which is a kind of a smaller model that's just a little bit behind those. You have Google's model, which they keep changing the name of, but I think it's Gemini right now. I'm not a big fan of that one, so I haven't been using it very much. And, there's a few others. There's Llama, which is the one where you don't have to do an API call. You can actually host that in the cloud, and you can spin it up on your own. And I think a lot of the bigger companies are going to end up using that because they're just worried that OpenAI is going to steal all their data.
Recently I was at the ISTE conference in Denver where I had a chance to work with and next to Google and Microsoft. And I actually had a chance to sit down with their major programmers and kind of ask them some of these questions. And I'm still trying to figure this out. And the only way that I can kind of translate everything here is if you think about a WordPress model, there's core, which everything goes around. And then on top of that, you've got themes, which other companies create themes. But then on top of those themes, you design the website. And I'm trying to figure out if at the core of AI, is there one center nucleus, or is Gemini its own nucleus and Copilot its own nucleus and Llama its own nucleus?
So what a lot of people are doing is we'll have it where you can switch between the different models, where we'll go to OpenAI, and with some things, OpenAI might be better, but with others, Claude might be better. And with others, Llama might be better. So people are going to switch back and forth between them. And let's say Claude is down one day. Well, if you had the Claude model on, you're going to want to be able to flip over to ChatGPT pretty much instantaneously. So what a lot of places are doing is you can literally change between all of these things pretty much at will. And that's what we're getting set up right now as well. We're using Claude and ChatGPT, and we're standing up Llama right now for some other things as well. So you're going to switch back and forth between these different models, and certain ones are going to perform better for different tasks. I was at a speech by a guy from Crew AI the other day, and what he's doing is agents that will go out, and it'll have a swarm of agents that will do things for you, and one of them will be to test prompts at scale and test them on different models. So it will be, okay, we're going to run this prompt 300 different ways or 3,000 different ways, and we're going to test it, and then we're going to test it on each of these different models, and we're going to see what the output is, and we're going to see where it's working best. So I don't think there's one nucleus, but I have trouble seeing a lot of people supplant the giants out there. That I think it's going to be, it's going to be OpenAI, it's going to be Anthropic, which is the maker of Claude, it's going to be Llama, which is made by Facebook, it's going to be Google's version. And I think those are the main competitors. And then China has a few that are probably going to be huge in China. That I don't think are really being used in the U.S., just like Baidu is used for, search over there.
Now, you've come up with a way to bring artificial intelligence right to us, and not only do that, but do it in a way that can possibly fake out somebody. You had mentioned earlier they might not know that they're speaking to an AI bot. How did all that work? How does that work? And when you're putting those things together, how do you make sure that... I don't even know the right questions to ask about these things. I've got so many going on right now. But basically, how does the system work?
The idea isn't to trick people. The idea is to give people their time back. So right now in the U.S., people spend about 10 billion hours a year basically on hold and repeating information to customer support agents. And the customer support agent, every time you get a new agent, you have to repeat yourself. Usually when you call into a place, someone isn't ready right away, so you have to sit on hold for a long period of time. And as a result, everyone hates the call center right now. As far as the employees, it's in the bottom 2% of job satisfaction. People would literally rather, clean up toilets than work at a call center. That's statistically true. You can look it up. Because of that, it's a revolving door for the companies. The average tenure is a little over a year, but the median tenure, right? We've got a bunch of teachers here, know the difference between average and median is more like 4 to 6 months. So, there's a lot of places that say, yeah, we hire 60 to have 40 start on day one, and then 20 of them are here after 2 weeks. Well, what does that mean? It means you're talking to people who don't know what they're talking about. They've been doing this job for a couple of months, generally. They're not very competent. They're not the best and the brightest out there. They're not very well versed in the product or the service that they're talking about. And, as a result of that, the experience isn't very good. And most of those jobs have been sent overseas and are now in other countries. And now you have a language barrier on top of it. So, the customer experience is very negative for the consumer. 30% of consumers out there today said they would rather shave their head, do their taxes, or go to the dentist than call customer support, right? So I want to fix this problem. I want to get rid of those hold times for everyone. I want to make it so you love calling customer support because your questions are answered almost immediately. They're answered accurately. They're answered by someone who's polite and courteous, right, that can really take care of any issue that you have almost instantaneously. So, that's really my goal.
Where are we on this journey of interconnectivity with devices? Can I now go to a website, have a conversation in text, perhaps give my phone number, have it call me, and now I'm having a voice conversation, and it's all hitting that same thread? Or
yeah, we're already doing that.
We're already doing that.
that. Like that's today. That's what we've put together. So
You can tell
as far as I know, we're the only ones who have both voice and text together. But, as far as the pickup rates and the connection rates, just being able to text someone first and say, hey, thanks for filling out, because we do everything in a TCPA compliant way. We do it, by the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. We make sure that we're doing it in a totally legal way. But, as soon as someone fills out that form on Google or on Facebook or on your website, they'll get a text and, a minute later and say, hey, I'm going to be, the person responsible for your account. I'm going to call you here in a minute. Please pick up. And then you're going to call that person. Just doing that will increase the answer rates 20, 30, 40%. And
is that person probably an AI bot, or is that person?
Yeah, and it's going to be an AI that's calling. An AI will call and will be able to field their questions and then run them through whatever the process is. If it's buying something, they'll be able to go and send out a Stripe link right then and there and collect the money, and then send them a confirmation of the order and make sure that order is done and everything is automatically put into the computer system. So it's just making sure it works really once. We test this stuff constantly, and we have to write tons of test scripts, and so it's a little more complicated than making sure it works once. But it keeps getting better. It keeps improving as it goes, where, the baseline that we have, it really hasn't changed much in the last 50 years. If anything, it's probably gone down a little. Now it should rapidly improve over what we have. And as these AI models keep coming out and keep getting more sophisticated, it's just going to get better.
As a consumer, I certainly appreciate the service. I appreciate that the technology is there. Recently, I just had to have a phone call with Apple, and Apple has a wonderful system where, yeah, I know it's a fake system, but at least I could have a conversation with it. But there is that time where I had to say, I need to talk to a human.
Yep.
What advice do you have when you're trying to talk to these systems, or in my case, when you were just frustrated beyond all belief? What is that safe word that says, get me to a freaking person, I need to have this conversation?
Well, it has to be built. So if it's not built, it's not going to be there. Apple is a giant corporation and, takes customer service seriously. So they have it, but some of the systems will, some of the systems won't. That's really going to be how people program it, because you can program these to do anything. They're computers at the end of the day. You give it an input, you get an output. Right? The same way as typing. It's just it deals much better with unstructured data than it ever has before.
I just love that system. I'm sitting there kind of frustrated at the world, and I had to call it because of a password or something like that. And it was like, I just said, I need to speak with the human, and boom, you heard the click, and next thing you know, within like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I would like to speak to a live person. If that's available, it should work. Again, if they set it up. But I don't think there's one answer to that question. I can tell you with a lot of the systems, if you say something like goodbye, it'll just hang up on you.
Many of our listeners are, of course, educators, and we're trying to figure out how can we best prepare our students for an AI-based world. As a business owner in this world, and somebody who's got, this is your focus, what advice do you have for teachers who are sitting here trying to prepare students for what us is, Star Trek unknown kind of stuff?
So think about it, right? The internet came out. What would happen if you were a teacher today and you said, hey, I want you to do research on a topic, but you're not allowed to use the internet?
Well, for many of us, and this isn't in my world, but from the people who I talk to, it's the calculator, right? Don't use the calculator. The calculator is cheating. Now everybody has one on their phones, right?
Yep.
So we're still in that conversation for some, not for all, but for some of this is cheating. Even in my own school district, I spent 45 minutes in one of my classes, 1 out of 10 of my classes. I put one prompt in to Copilot, GPT, and Magic School AI, and Gemini. And next thing I know, I had some teachers walking into my class saying, I'm teaching the kids how to cheat. So we got to get around all that, right?
Yeah, frankly, I would embrace it.
which I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this as cheating. I think it's like telling kids you can't use a computer because a computer could do bad things, or you can't use a car because a car could be used to drive into someone.
Right.
That these tools, anyone who uses them is going to be more valuable to an organization than someone who doesn't. You can get 10, 20, 50 times the work done using these tools. So I think the biggest thing that you can do is get them started early, get them taught how to use these tools, and, set things up where maybe you actually have to think a little. And, if someone's writing a paper, you have them come up and give a presentation on what they wrote. And now they have to defend what they wrote, and they have to explain what they wrote. And you can ask them questions about what they wrote. And they should be able to answer it, and they should know what it is. So, I mean, I think there's plenty of ways around that. But, I'll give you an example. My daughter's fourth grade class just did a project where they illustrated children's books. And she did like a 50-page children's book that she put together. Now, did she use ChatGPT to help with the grammar? She absolutely did, right? To make sure the grammar was correct on the stuff, to go and proofread things, to say, are things done right? But she put together this massive book and took a ton of time on the project and reading it and putting together the prompts and making sure the pictures looked right and making sure it made sense and learning how to use these tools. And everyone in her class did it. And it was a great experience for everyone in the class. They edited this thing on Canva. Right? She's better on Canva than I am. She's better. I mean, really, it's, and it's because they were getting them used to using these tools. So I think, could you imagine if you get out of school and a kid doesn't know how to use a computer? They've never used one of these things before. They're not going to do very well in the workforce. Really, I think it's holding students back. So I would go the other direction with it. How do you do things with it? How do you make these things happen? And especially if you're talking about something like mathematics, generally it's not that great at math yet. Any sort of advanced math or any sort of logic problem, you might want to check that work, because if you're just putting it in there, you're probably going to get the wrong answer. I wouldn't say more times than not, but I don't think you're getting an A.
One of the things that I'm working on this summer is how do I take the assignments that I gave out last year, but then adjust them so that, as you said, yeah, if you want to use the tool, great. If you don't, that's certainly fine. But the answer isn't going to be something that the tool produced. The answer is something that a human produced or that they have produced. And it was interesting once I had that one class with that one little 45-minute long lesson, a week later, suddenly all their grammar and their sentence structure and their paragraphs just magically got better. And I couldn't figure out why suddenly. Why were they suddenly doing a good job and not understanding why I was, arguing about their suddenly fine English skills here. Tom, I got to ask you, when you're looking at this from a parent's point of view, you said you've got a fourth grader. I've got 3 kids going into 5th grade this summer. Where do you see the next 5 to 10 years? I'm asking you specifically as a parent. And I want to ask you as a follow-up as the business owner, but when you see education, when you see AI, when you start to mix these together, where do you hope that your kids are over the next couple years?
I mean, I was always frustrated in school because you would get a math problem or you would get something and you would have maybe one example in the book on how to do it, and then they wouldn't show you how to do it. So there was a problem that had to be done a totally different way. And it's like, well, we never learned this. Maybe they went over an example in class, but I wouldn't know if I did it right. I wouldn't know if I did it wrong. This was typically with, once you got to more advanced algebra or calculus or something along those lines. And I said, I don't really know how to handle this situation. And being able to see other examples. I mean, I think what's happening with, one, the internet for education, and 2, AI specifically is great for the education industry, that you can put these things out there. You can give immediate feedback. Even if you're not going to show it, you can show, hey, you did this wrong. It can teach them how to do things. You can have them make beautiful presentations. So I would kind of raise the bar and say, hey, I want a presentation. I want a visual presentation. I want it to be interactive. I want there to be graphics. I want there to be video. I want, I want to wow. Make this something that I remember. I was in a college class and we had to do a presentation, and they gave us like a half hour. And we put together a PowerPoint presentation. We talked about this thing in front of the class, and the teacher said, this is the best this is the best job someone's ever done. And all we did was take everything, put it into a PowerPoint presentation, then present it up on the board. There was nothing special about what we did, but we actually used technology. I was in court a little while back, right? Instead of everyone passing around documents, the lawyer took the document, blew it up on the screen, was able to circle things on it, have parts underlined, show it. This is what it says in the document. This is what was done. This is why it doesn't match, right? Here's example number 2. Here's example number 3. And they won, right? Because they used the technology to do a better job the other side could, which is fiddling around with stuff all over the place. Nothing was organized. They're passing out sheets of paper everywhere. They had a stronger case too, but I certainly think the presentation helps, right? So I would level it up. I would say you have to put together a great presentation. You must use video. You must use graphics. It should look professional. It should look like something that has been produced on TikTok or something that has been produced on Instagram or Facebook. Make it engaging. I would go the other direction with it. I would say I'm going to have a higher criteria now because there's so much help that's out there and available. So it should be perfect.
This summer, I'm taking I'm taking 2 of my triplets and teaching them both a little bit about video editing. One I've got on Final Cut, which is traditional video editing, non-linear, and the other one I've got on what we're recording on now, which is Riverside. One has got the AI focus to it, and the other has got more of the creative. And I'm just kind of sitting back and watching how each of them understand these 2 brand new worlds for them. And as a parent, it's been fantastic trying to get them together here. Now, I want to end today and ask you that same question as a business owner, as you're trying to push that cutting edge, and as you're trying to be innovative within your own business to then lead the industry. Where do you see the next, I'll even go 12 months, let alone 5 years or 10 years, but where do you see the next 12 months going with artificial intelligence and all these different emerging technologies surrounding it?
So I think, one, a lot more people are going to start using it. Still, if you go out and you ask 100 people, half of them, at least half of them haven't tried it, probably 80 or 90%. So huge numbers haven't used this yet. Even with college kids I was talking to, they're like, oh yeah, I used it to, help with a paper, right? Something like that. But, to help proofread, to check my grammar, right? But they haven't really used it. So I think people will start using this technology more and more, and it's so powerful that you're going to start having rising adoption everywhere. As far as businesses, 2024 is the year that people are building products that are actually useful for businesses, and 2025 and 2026 are going to be when there's rapid adoption of these things. So what we're doing, we're cutting the cost 90% for companies. Literally 90%. And that's going to keep going down, right? That's 90% today. In a year or two, it might be 95 or 97% because the prices on this are coming down as the compute goes up, right? So every time you hear about a new release from OpenAI, they're not raising the price, they're dropping the price. And the model that you were using might have dropped 80%. So if you stick with that, if that same model was good enough and is covering your needs, right, the price probably just dropped 80%. So the prices are going to keep coming down on this. It's going to keep getting cheaper, and there's going to be rapid adoption for businesses for anything that is being done on a computer. The AI will be able to do better, faster, and cheaper than a human with less errors within the next 12 months if we can't already today. Just absolutely everything. As far as training, I got to tell you, I think the biggest use case, like one of the biggest things that it's just great at today, is anything you don't know how to do technically. just have it train you on it, right? You don't know how to code. You're trying to do something with code. How can I do this? What's the framework? What would this code look like? Okay, I'm getting this error. How would I fix this error? And really, it's almost a logic problem of what questions do I ask and what do I get back? But if I'm trying to do something on my computer and I don't know how, I don't call customer support anymore. I put it into Claude or I put it into ChatGPT. I typically have the answer 95% faster. I have a team of engineers working for me. I would ask them, hey, guys, I'm having a little trouble with this. How do I do this? And then the guy's struggling too. This is an engineer with a master's degree, 10 years of experience, winning coding competitions. I'm like, how do we do this? And he's like, boy, let me think. And, and he's, ChatGPT, I have the answer in 10 seconds. I mean, it's just unbelievable for that. So I would start playing with it. I would start saying, how can I incorporate this? I can give you some examples.
Please.
We had someone who had a retail store that we were dealing with. And actually, a friend of mine was dealing with them. But they had this retail store, and they had 10,000 items or something online. And they didn't have descriptions for 9,000 of the items. So they had the AI go and create a description for all of the items. And they did it in a day. And their sales went up 30%, within a week. Because people wanted to read a description of what the item was. And, something so simple that took a day to increase sales 30% is massive. We're using it for SEO. We're using it to find the keywords, write articles with the relevant keywords that we want in there. And then we have a human proofread those articles, make sure they sound good, make sure the quality is up to snuff. And we're producing, about 20 of those a day that we're putting out there on Google. So, we went from something like 3 organic clicks a year ago to, about 3,000 last month. And within the next 6 to 12 months, I think we're going to be at 30,000 plus. It's just going parabolic. We're using it for reviewing code. We're using it to make sure things aren't broken. You can use it for anything simple within coding. You want to make a button. I want to make a green button. I want to make it this shape. I want to make it this length, right? You might be fiddling around for hours trying to do that on your own. Now you give it to the AI, you say, do this. It has everything in Stack Overflow that's ever been written on this topic. And it comes up with it, 10 seconds. You have your answer on exactly how to do that and that it can be implemented. I mean, so the use cases, they're really pretty much endless. It's just how imaginative are you? So, come up with some projects, have them do some stuff. I always remember the coding projects that I did in college. I would end up spending 10 times more time on those than I would anything else. They took so long to do them, but it was interesting. You can do the same thing today. So know the power of the things that are out there and force the kids to use them, force them to think, force them to figure out novel ways to do these things. How are they going to do it? If they say, I don't know how to do this, have the AI teach you. I don't know how to do an API. Have the AI teach you. Have it find the documentation, have it read it, have it program the thing. Do a presentation on what it taught you. I mean, there's so many things you can do with this.
This is the Jeff Bradbury Show, episode number 53. If you find this show interesting and you'd like to be a guest, head on over to teachercast.net/contact. Fill out the form. We would love to feature you and all the great things that you're doing to make a difference in this world. Tom, thank you again so much for coming on, and we hope to have you on very shortly again. And that wraps up this episode of the Jeff Bradbury Show. On behalf of Tom and everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.